Everyone treats summer like it owes you happiness. Long days, pool parties, your best life on a loop. So what does it mean when you feel worse? The summer blues are real. It's why summer is one of the busiest stretches of the year for people starting therapy. Therapy is not only for when you're in crisis. Growth therapy is for all the moments when you decide you want more. More support, more clarity, more tools. Mental health isn't a destination you reach. It's something you build, and Grow makes that easier. Grow connects you with thousands of high-quality licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. The therapist you want takes your insurance on Grow. Grow accepts over 125 insurance plans. Sessions average $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/booknow today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/booknow. growtherapy.com/booknow. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. What can I get for you?
I'd like a hamburger, a ribeye, some beef roast, some beef ribs. Just give me the whole cow.
Pull up to the second window and we'll see you next crime.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. I am John here with Jamie. I'm not going to lie. I'm still over here reading about centrifugal force. And if you are wondering why I'm saying that, listen to Bless Their Hearts from this week.
Yes, I think it comes out tomorrow, and I think you will be dumber having listened. So today we're going to focus on something simple: crime and beef.
Those are two of my favorite things in one thing.
Amen, brother. Why don't you get us rolling?
I didn't even realize that you and I were both researching some True Crime to Goes, and both of yours were about beef. And then the one that I sent is called Operation Mincemeat.
Yeah.
So we all, two of us, both of us had
everybody in this room
something to do with meat.
We must be really hungry.
We're going to go to Benton, Kentucky.
Benton.
A population of about 4,000. This is pretty small. The county seat of Marshall County, and it's tucked between Kentucky Lake and Lake Berkeley in the western part of the state. Beautiful area out there. A lot of farms, a lot of cattle. It's often called cattle country. It's the kind of community where a man's handshake is his bond, and his reputation is the most valuable thing that he owns.
I want to live there. That's
I think we kind of do, you know.
But cul-de-sacs like that. I get that.
So for years, Brian Keith McLean was the kind of man that other men in the community wanted to be. He owned cattle operations across Kentucky and Texas. He, by all accounts, was generous with his neighbors. He partied, sponsored rodeos. He talked about 80,000 head of cattle that he had spread across his operations. That's a lot of head of cattle.
It's a lot of beef.
He promised investors a guaranteed 30% return on their investment, but the cattle were not real.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
This is a Ponzi scheme involving meat.
It's a Ponzi scheme with cows.
All right. Tell me more.
Spring of 2023, a lender named Rabo Agri-Finance ordered a physical inventory of the cattle that Brian McLean had said that he had for collateral against more than $50 million he had taken out in loans. They found fewer than 9,000 head of cattle. Just one more time, he said he had 80,000 head of cattle is what he told people. If you're not from the country, a head of cattle is a cow. That's pretty much all it is. The difference, again, about 71,000 animals that did not exist, and they never existed. They were in spreadsheets. They were in invoices. They were in the trust that people put in Brian McLean when they invested in his company, but they were not on his farm.
How in the world? So cattle are physical assets. They have real value and they are individually ear tagged, and they move constantly between pastures, feedlots, barns, etc. So tracking thousands of animals across multiple operations in multiple states, mind you, is very complicated. So a lender who takes cattle as collateral cannot easily verify that the cattle is actually there that they, have claimed to have, right? So if I tell you I have 80,000 head of cattle, what are you basing that off of? Do I have to have a log with 80,000 different ear tag numbers to give you? And even if I did do that, how are you going to verify it?
Because I could make those up too.
Yeah. Like unless you're going to fly a drone and count every cow across multiple states. So yeah. Is
Brian
that how
McLean,
this guy is?
He
is that what he's doing?
operated 3 different companies: McLean Farms in Benton, 7M Cattle Feeders Inc. in Hereford, Texas, with a license capacity of 115,000 head, and McLean Feed Yard in Freona, Texas. He had gathered cattle across Kentucky, kind of all of the SEC states, if you will, and he did have some cattle, but nobody was seeing these returns, and some people have referred to him as the Bernie Madoff of cows.
So let's get to know him just a little bit more. Again, he was widely known as a generous and just a nice guy who would sponsor rodeos, livestock events. He seemed to be well liked by everybody, and people that were investing in his company, they got paid for the most part. They were people that he knew as well. They were neighbors. They were friends, people who trusted him because they had known him for years. The Wall Street Journal investigation titled "The Cattle Empire That Turned Out to Be a Giant Ponzi Scheme" described how he convinced investors, banks, and neighbors that he was running 80,000 head of cattle and basically had a cattle empire. But this was all just fiction. It was not anything remotely close to the size that he had told investors.
After Rabo's AgriFinance did their inventory, they found that there was a difference of about $100 million worth of inventory, and they intended to pursue charges against Brian McLean. They were going to sue him and all of his associated companies for the money that he had owed them. And John, with them on his tail, instead of running away, instead of waiting to be sued and potentially arrested for fraud, on April 18th, 2023, Brian McLean took his own life at the age of 52. On April 28th of that year, 10 days after his death, all 3 of his companies, who still had people running then, filed Chapter 7 liquidation bankruptcy. The representatives from Rabo's AgriFinance gathered the cattle that actually existed and sold them at Bluegrass Stockyards to try to get back a fraction of what they were owed, and that's really all that they got. There was a formal notification that went out the following year to anybody who had sold livestock to them to go back and get their record straight, because this had been a huge, huge scam in the cattle industry, and it's still impacting farms that are selling cattle, buying cattle, and especially those that are taking loans today, because these loan companies don't want this to happen to them again.
Yeah, to kind of put this in perspective of how much we're talking about, there were, so he's borrowing money from creditors, and that's what he's paying investors, quote unquote. And it says that he had over 102 creditors from 14 different states, plus investors from Alberta, Canada. And so the amount of money that we're talking about, like if you take away the animals that he actually did possess, that still leaves roughly an $80 million shortfall in livestock that did not exist. So he saw no other way out. You can't get out of that kind of debt. So the only way forward he saw was his own life. And that's so tragic.
They had been building a case against him, they being federal investigators. We don't know if anybody else in these operations has been charged. That's not been announced publicly, but John, I would imagine it's hard to hide 800,000 head of cattle, or 80,000 head of cattle, by yourself.
Yeah, well, he didn't have them. So
Yeah, that's a great point.
easy to hide when they don't exist.
That's an excellent point. We do have another story about cattle. This one may be a little less tragic, I hope. We'll see you after the break. When you hear about a multi-million-dollar theft ring, you probably think about cash, jewels, bank robberies, luxury cars, but this case is not about any of that. Federal prosecutors say that 3 Florida men stole something far less glamorous, but no less valuable. They stole $9 million worth of frozen meat.
This is not an easy thing to do because in order to make money, you have to sell it. And in order to sell frozen beef, you have to keep it frozen so that it doesn't spoil. This is too much work.
I was going to say, if I'm going to steal something that is worth $9 million, I'm going to make it a little easier on myself.
And I mean, I know that prices have went up, but we're talking about just a little bit more than a freezer full of meat here. I mean, this is cargo ships full of meat, basically, right?
Yeah, well, most of this did rely on paperwork, patience, and the trust built into a commercial trucking industry. Cargo theft has been around for decades, but it usually involves products that are easy to move, electronics, pharmaceuticals, expensive clothing, things that disappear into the black market almost immediately, don't have to be stored, don't have to be taken care of, but frozen meat is its own thing. Every load had to stay refrigerated, had to be transported quickly, and eventually, like you said, had to be sold before it spoiled. You're not going to go out selling dry, frozen, freeze-dried steaks, right?
Yeah, so authorities say the scheme operated for about 2 years, between 2021 and 2022. According to court records, the men established trucking companies that appeared legitimate. They obtained business names and transportation credentials that allowed them to bid on commercial freight just like any other carrier. Food distributors and meat processors hired them to transport refrigerated loads to customers across the country. The truck showed up, the trailers were loaded, the paperwork was signed, but then instead of making the delivery, prosecutors say the shipments vanished. By the time someone realized the trailer had never arrived, it was already gone.
Yeah, I wonder how that worked. I mean, once upon a time, obviously, you didn't know something was missing until it didn't arrive. But I wonder if they track things a little more thoroughly nowadays.
I bet they
and
do
by
in
things,
the
I
meat
mean,
business now.
yeah, they should, because this could be a landmark meat tracking case. But the shipment disappeared, and another one somewhere else, and they continued to get these reports about all of it disappearing. Same methods. Similar paperwork, although for different trucking businesses, and eventually investigators connected about 45 thefts spread across 6 states that they realized weren't just one-off crimes. They were chasing an organized operation of frozen meat thieves.
If you look at an 18-wheeler, the long trailer, if it has a refrigeration unit, it can keep stuff frozen. So a refrigerated trailer can carry hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of product. And prosecutors say that the combined value of the stolen cargo altogether was over $9 million. So yeah, this is not going to be something that is going to go under the radar long. There's a lot of people expecting these shipments and they're not coming. You don't just lose a couple $100,000 and forget about it.
Inventory on these things is really thorough. I mean, obviously not frozen meat. I used to work at a department store, and every time that something would show up, you would get the manifest, not necessarily for people, but for every item on that truck. You have to double check and make sure it's all there. So I guess you're really likely to get caught if you just skim steaks off the top. So you may as well just take them all. Seemed to be what they were doing.
Apparently. So these guys were arrested. They were sentenced to prison, bringing an end to what was described as one of the largest refrigerated cargo theft operations that they had ever encountered. Like, that's kind of crazy. I remember talking about a case not too long ago where there was a school that had ordered a bunch of hot wings every week,
Yep.
but the kids at those schools were never served hot wings.
Ever.
So they, hundreds of thousands of dollars in wings, but this is millions of dollars in beef. I think it's just hard for our minds to really understand how big of an operation this was.
Because like you said, there has to be demand for you to supply it to somebody to make money. Now, this is $9 million worth of meat. Are you selling it all for $1 million? And even so, who can you find that needs $1 million worth of frozen meat?
Well, I mean,
besides me,
that makes me wonder, like, it's obviously companies who are moving a lot of meat themselves. So have we ate stolen meat when we go to our favorite fast food restaurants?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, tasted just as good. So I didn't know it was hot. The overwhelming majority of thefts like this happen without incident. In general, shippers trust carriers. They trust brokers, and businesses rely on thousands of trucks moving things. Go out and drive on the interstate. You're going to see hundreds of these in just a short trip. So this is a mass infrastructure piece for the American economy, and obviously in other countries as well. And this is something that did not make big headlines, but John, it's certainly something that could disrupt an industry and cause new precedents to be set and cause, I don't know, companies to kind of freak out, I would think.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, companies just aren't going to lose a couple $100,000 here and there and not want to get that back. So I would imagine that theft raises prices for your average consumer too, because they've got to get reimbursed somehow. So I think I've heard of Walmart has a huge shoplifting problem, and in the billions of dollars annually. How are they making up for that loss if it's not passed on to us, the law-abiding consumers?
Spoiler alert, it is. It's passed on to us.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. Like you said, they were sentenced to prison. We weren't able to find the records to see the exact sentences. And I wonder how long that should be. How long should you go to prison for an organized crime syndicate that steals steak? I don't know, 8-10 years, something like that.
I don't know, man. I mean, that's a lot of money that you're stealing from somebody. So yeah, 10 years easy.
Yeah. I think if this was dollars, if this was famous paintings, if this was anything other than meat, it would have been a big headline. And obviously the sentencing guidelines would have been clear. So I think you just have to go by the market value when talking about this and not necessarily look at the contents of what was stolen.
Yeah. Jamie, this is interesting. And I wonder, like, when is it going to be leaked who is buying all this meat?
And what John really means is, where can I buy some of this discounted meat?
Yeah, I want a ribeye for like a few bucks.
Right? That's the part of it I don't get. Sure, this sounds like I'm going to steal $9 million worth of stuff. I've got this plan. Obviously, they didn't get away with it, but I can't wrap my mind around the distribution. Yeah.
There had to be a big operation in that. I mean, how many people does it take to move that much meat?
That should be Arby's next commercial. I'll tell you that right there.
Yeah, we hired more staff because we got that much meat.
We got that much meat for cheap. Off these trucks, it was super random. I don't know, they just stopped by. Guys, I hope you enjoy these True Crime To Go episodes. These were obviously two related crimes in content, but different levels of tragedy. And we will be back with another set of True Crime To Go episodes on Friday.
All right, guys. We love you.
It's been 2 crime stories in 20 minutes or less.
Would you like crime with that?
You've listened to True Crimecast, distributed by Stoveleg Media. Check out stoveleg.com to find out more about your hosts and to find other podcasts to listen to. Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.